It is fun to dream and imagine and visualize things. And one of my earliest jobs back in California was working for EDS, Electronic Data Systems, and then Blue Cross of California, which is where I first started getting into networking. And I remember just having a blast in drawing out topologies and potential ways that our network could be configured. And many of those diagrams never made it to the final production, but it was a lot of fun. So what I want to do in this video, as we take a look at how to learn to use Packet Tracer to build these topologies, I'd like you to indulge me just for a minute, and let's bring out a whiteboard and do some work on designing a network, just the basics together, and then I'll walk you through how simple it is to take those ideas and those concepts to put them into Packet Tracer and actually see the network being developed in front of our eyes. All right, so let's dream together. Let's imagine that we're going to have a network with at least a few computers. We'll call this PC1. Great, and that PC is very likely going to be attached to a switch, probably an access layer switch, a layer 2 switch of some type. So we'll call that switch 1, and then that switch may be part of a block of switches that could have maybe some multi-layer switches. So we'll say this is switch 2, and this is switch 3, and then maybe we have a cross connect there as well for some fault tolerance. Then this goes to a router. And this router symbol, I have a little confession to make. I've been a CCIE since 2001 when I got my route switch, and then a CCIE in security in 2003. And that router symbol, I thought for the first probably 10 years of my Cisco career, because I guess I just wasn't paying attention, I thought the symbol was this. I thought that was a symbol for the Cisco router, when in reality, it is this. It's got 2 arrows pointing in and 2 arrows pointing out. When I made that discovery, I thought, oh, I've been drawing that wrong forever. All right, I'll just do some Control-Z's and I'll take those off. All right. In any event, if this is the network that we want to build, then we can also plan on VLANs and IP addressing schemes and so forth. I'd like to show you how simple it is to go ahead in Packet Tracer and build this same topology in just a matter of moments. And so also I would encourage you, as we go through this together, besides having fun, which I am, so thanks for joining me, besides having fun doing this together, I'd also like you to participate. So at some point when it's convenient for you, I'd like you to go up to Netacad, sign in, get an account for free, sign in, download Packet Tracer, and then actually practice. So right now, if you're on a mobile device or something else, just watching it all, that's great. But I would encourage you, before too long, maybe even before 10 days goes by, when you're sitting at a computer, download the Packet Tracer and have this fun along with me. I will be here with these videos. You can come back and watch this skill about Packet Tracer anytime you want. Okay, so without further ado, let's take this topology and let's put it into Packet Tracer and bring it to life. Okay, so let's bring in Packet Tracer. Here it is. So here in Packet Tracer, I have the logical button selected for the logical view of the network. Also down here on the right, I have it set for real time compared to the physical and simulation options, which we'll cover in a separate video. So if we wanted to build that network, what we would do is down here on the bottom left, we can just hover. We have network devices, end devices, and let's start with the PC. So I'm going to click here on end devices. And with end devices selected, over here we have PCs and laptops, and let's go ahead and grab let's grab a PC because that was based on our plan. So boom, there's a PC. Also, if we want this bigger or smaller, we can zoom. There's zoom options up here. So we'll make it a little bit bigger. That's great. And then we can also scroll around to get it just right. Wonderful. Next, we need a layer 2 switch. So down here, we'll click on the icon for network devices. And with network devices selected down below, we have routers. I'm just hovering over here. Switches, hubs, wireless devices. Great. So I'm going to click on switches. And then over here is going to give us a list of switches that we could put in. So a nice 2960 switch, that'll do. So we'll bring that up and clunk. Now we have a switch. You can also rename these two. So we can call this access switch if you wanted to. And we could call this, if we want to call it PC1, we could. So it's very flexible. So we have our PC, we have our access switch. And if we hover over these devices, it'll give us details about the ports involved with those devices. So let's build the rest of our topology. We need some more switches. Now let's get some bigger switches for the other two. So with the network devices selected and the switch option selected below that, we have these options here for switches. Let's go for some 3650s. So I'll take a 3650, drop it, grab another 3650, drop it, And let's go ahead and call this bad boy, let's call it Core 1. Great, and we'll call this one. Any guesses on what we should call this one? How about Core 2? If you're saying that, I'm right with you. There we go, Core 2. So now we have these three switches, an access layer switch and Core 1 and Core 2. Now, if you're brand new to networking and you haven't taken a look and worked with how routers or switches work yet, no worries. What I'm doing here is just giving you an example of how simple it is to add devices to a topology, and then once you learn more about how to configure them and work with them, you can get the hands-on practice right here at the command line interface for these devices. Okay, great. We need, what else did we need? Let me take a peek. We also needed, oh yeah, we need a router right there. So we'll go ahead and bring back Packet Tracer, and let's add a router. So under Network Devices here, below that, the submenu, I'll choose Routers, and let's bring in a, but most of these would be fine. Let's grab a 2911 and just drag it up there. Boom. And there's our router. And we'll call that router R1. I've got fond memories of R1. We go way, way back, about 30 plus years. Okay, then to put some connections in place, this is really easy. Now, if we were going to rack and stack, let me show you real quick. If we were going to rack and stack physical gear, we would make the physical connections and choose which cables we're going to use and what ports we're going to use and so forth. And that's great in a physical world. But in a logical world, we can have it do it for us. We can tell it exactly what ports we want to use, which interfaces, or we can have it do it automatically. So depending on what level you're at in your learning and studying, to get up and running, there's a really quick, easy way to get the connections in place lickety-split. And that method is to use this option right here. So we're going to click on connections, and then we have lots of options for connections, straight through cables, crossover cables. If you hover over these, it gives a description of it down below. If you're brand new and you're not sure what type of cable you need, no worries, check this one out. This is the automatically choose connection type for me. So if we click on that, so it's lightning bolt here and then lightning bolt here, we can then just click on the PC and then click on the access layer switch, and it builds that connection. It's also giving the details on what ports are being used. So it's Fast Ethernet 0, that's a shortcut. F is a shortcut for Fast Ethernet. Port 0, and on the switch, it's Fast Ethernet 0/1. So then, if we want another connection from the access switch, we simply click on the lightning bolt again, from access switch to Core 1, and then again, from Core 1 to Core 2, and then again, from Core 2 to access switch, and we have all our connections in place. Also, if we want to resize these, we can to make them a little more readable here. There we go. Fantastic. Now these are also, let me point out here, that these icons here are link indicator lights. And you notice all the ones between the switches are all red. Now red means it's down. Green means it's up. And amber or orange would be somewhere in between. We'll take a look at that in later videos. So one of the challenges here is that on these switches, these Core 1 and Core 2 switches, they are modular and they have a power supply option. And they don't have a power supply installed by default. Wait. Stop the truck, Keith. You're saying that if we add a simulated layer 3 multi-layer switch that we just did, the 3650, and we put it on the topology just like a real switch that has no power supply, it's not coming up. And that's exactly right. So here's how we fix that. We're going to double click on Core 2. That brings up a separate window. So if you notice right here in the top left hand corner of this pop-up, it says Core 2, referring to this switch, and we are looking at the physical tab. So this is what the switch looks like on the back, and there is no power supply. So if we want to add a power supply, check this out. We'll click on this power supply down here, drag and drop. Boom, power supply installed, ready to go. And if we want to repeat that, we should for Core 1. So we'll click on Core 1, drag and drop a power supply, and now it's got a power supply. And on the access layer switch, it has a built-in power supply. So it's not modular for the power supply, and that's why it's already up and running. And let's add one more connection, and we'll do that here by clicking on the connections option here, and then we're going to click on the auto connect and connect Core 1 over to the router. And by default, what this is doing is showing us the ports involved. This is saying that the connection from Core 1 is using its gigabit 1/0/3 interface going to R1's gig 00 interface. Now, if you don't want to see those, you don't have to. What we could do is we could go to Options up here off the menu, and then select Preferences. And under Preferences, you could say, please do not show port labels. So if we take that off, it will not show us what those are. And there's no apply button, it just happens. So if we go back, that removed all the interface labels. The last thing here is that this router, the interfaces on a router are shut down. Down, baby, down. They're down by default. So if we want a router interface to be up, we have to manually configure that. And this would be a good opportunity to walk through how simple it is to get to the command line interface on a Cisco device here in the topology. All we'll do is we simply click on the device that we want to configure. So I've just clicked on R1, it brings up this pop-up. Here's a physical view of it, the config information, and the CLI. CLI is an acronym for Command Line Interface. And from here, I'm going to press Enter, and we're sitting at the router prompt. Now, if you've never configured a Cisco router before, no worries. There's lots of opportunities to practice and learn. But what we should know by default is that this router, this little prompt, the router greater than symbol, that greater than symbol means that we are in privilege level 1. Privilege mode level 1, also called user mode, where we can't really do a lot of configuration or fancy work because we're sitting in user mode. To get into privilege level 15 mode, we would type in enable, and you could also type in enable 15, but a lot of people just type in enable because it defaults to level 15. That's like King Kong mode. Press enter, and that puts us into privilege mode. The prompt changes to the router name followed by a pound symbol, and now we're in privilege mode. We can also do a show privilege, press enter, and it says, yep, you're at privilege level 15. So from here, we can go in and do all kinds of configuration on this device. One of those things would be to go tell that interface. I'm going to go back to options, preferences, and I do want to see those ports. So I'm going to say, please always show port labels so I can see what port I need to configure. And what we want to do is I want to configure gig 00 so that it is up and not shut down. So to do that, I'll click on R1 again. I'll bring it over here so we can see it. Fantastic. And then we'll go into configuration mode on this router. To get there, we're going to type in configure space terminal, which in English means I want to configure this router, this device, from the terminal that I'm currently sitting at. Press enter, and now that puts us into a place called global configuration mode. Now, if we want to configure a specific interface, we would need to go into the interface compartment or category for that interface. To do that, we type in interface. Also, I'm using just a few characters and hitting tab. If there's a unique command, it auto-completes for us, just like a Cisco iOS router would. So I'm going to go into interface gig 0/0, and the command that we are going to use to tell this interface, gig 00, that we want it to be up, is how I taught my Cisco dog how to stand. And that is the command no sit. I never actually trained a dog to do no sit to make it stand. But with a Cisco interface, a Cisco router interface, to make it come up, the command is no shut down. If we type no shut down, that causes the interface to come up. You notice the link LED, the indicator just changed there, implying that that interface is coming up. And then the switch is doing a little magic act with something called spanning tree protocol. All those topics we'll save for another moment. But what I wanted to share with you in this nugget is how quick and easy it is to take the ideas we had, these ideas right here, about building a topology, and then using Packet Tracer, dragging and dropping them onto the workspace for Packet Tracer, and then having further the ability to go in and configure and tweak and get hands-on practice. And one of the things that we're going to find is that at the entry level and the CCNA level, the commands that we need to practice and learn and work with, they work here in Packet Tracer just like they would on Live Gear. So whether it's Live Gear or Packet Tracer, we're getting the opportunity to practice and work with the command line interface. So my question is, if we're going into configuration mode on a Cisco device with the command configure space terminal, or config T as the cool kids do it to shortcut that, if we're using that command, which is better, using that command on Live Gear or using it in a simulation or an emulation? And the answer is, well, Keith, the answer might be, well, Keith, if it does the same thing, we're getting that same hands-on practice, the same look and feel, I would say they're about equal from a practice perspective. And I would 100% agree with that. So my motivation here is that I want us to understand that Packet Tracer is one of the most effective ways for new people to get up and running and hands-on practice at the CLI and with the Cisco devices that is available out there. So I'm hoping you're going to join me in this journey and practice alongside of me. So I've got something really special for you, and that's this. In the next video, I'd like to walk you through the physical view. What do you mean, Keith, the physical view? This is a simulation. Well, in the background, as we're adding these network devices to our topology on this workspace, it's also in the background creating a physical view in a rack format of those devices if we want to get a physical look. So if we want to see this gear in Packet Tracer, it's already doing the work for us. And I'll walk you through how to do that in the very next nugget. So I'll see you then. Meanwhile, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.